Greetings and welcome back to the Casual Wargamer. I've just finished watching a video that was put up several hours ago by Tabletop Tactics. Games Workshop, The History and the Hate. And it's an interesting video because the beard spends 10 minutes talking about the history of Games Workshop and then a tiny little bit to simply say the hate isn't relevant, basically. And that people should get on with the positivity. And that's not a bad sentiment. But the negativity is there for a reason. And these are my thoughts. First and foremost, Games Workshop is a business. It exists not for us, the gamers, it exists to make money. And Games Workshop is a prime example of that. The amount of money that their company makes is ridiculous. But the way they do it is part of the problem. People say that Games Workshop products, that Warhammer 40k, Warhammer in general, I suppose, is not expensive compared to other hobbies. But what hobbies are they comparing it to? I've seen people comparing it to things like the latest PlayStation or Xbox, sports. You know, if you are a keen golfer or whatever, you've got to pay for those sort of things. I've seen people compare it to being a musician and buying musical instruments. You need to, but those are all very different things. Those are things that once you've purchased it, all right, I know a PlayStation is out of date after several years, but generally you fork out 350, 400 quid, whatever it is, for a console, and it works. It does what it says on the tin. You haven't got a problem. Yes, you've got to buy games for it. But in the long run, that's not expensive. Warhammer is expensive because it's overpriced. In order to get into the game, you've got to fork out almost £60 for a rulebook. Let's just assume you're not going to paint it. You're just going to do grey plastic. You've still got to buy your glues. You've still got to fork out £35 for a codex. You haven't even bought any models yet, and you've nearly 100 quid. You need a character. Well, for some reason, a character is like one model is like half the price of a box set. It's like 24 quid. Then you're looking at £30, £40 for a 10-man squad of something. You're going to want, let's say 2 or 3 of them to start you off. You're going to want something like a Dreadnought or similar. You're easily looking at having to fork out a small fortune. And if you are able to do that, then absolutely fantastic. But the thing is, once you've done that, you can't just sit there and play it. You've still got to expand your army. Everybody, all of us do it. I mean, I have over 7,000 points. Nothing compared to some people. But I have over 7,000 points of Space Marines. I still buy stuff, still adding units to it because I don't have them and I want the options. But the pricing puts me off. If the prices were reasonable, and I would say halve them from what they currently are, Game Workshop would still make a small fortune, obviously not as much. And not only would you get more people buying, you'd get more people getting into the hobby because it becomes a viable option. Little Timmy's mum and dad can quite happily, pay 20 quid for a rule book and £15 for a couple of, for a box or something. It's the prices. They're far too expensive. Another problem is, and we've seen this with the likes of 10th edition. 10th edition, they gave us a beta set of rules. They weren't finished. They threw them out there and had us, the player base, beta test them. Some people even said alpha test them, but I don't think it's that bad. You've had a balanced data slate that made part of 2 recently released codices, Tyranids and Space Marines, outdated before the books even came out, before people had even spent their money on it. That's not acceptable. All right, it's points and points change, but it's not the point. When you buy a codex, you expect everything in it to be current, probably is the right word. You can change the points 6 months down the line, but you don't change the points before the product's even released. That way lies madness. Then there's the constant changes. If Games Workshop put their mind to it, they could produce balanced rules and balanced codices, but they don't want to because it forces a kind of, staggering of power play. There's power creep. Little Timmy buys his Death Guard. They're great. He beats his friend's Ultramarines. He doesn't beat someone else's AdMech. AdMech get a codex, and suddenly his Death Guard are getting stomped because each new release is more powerful. And the person who got their initial codex is left sitting in the dust going, well, I was good once. They need to balance their stuff. They need to work this stuff out before they release a new edition. Come on. Then there's the issue of releasing editions every couple of years. I mean, God, this irritates me to no end. I'm forking out all this money. I'm buying your starter box, your 100-odd quid starter box. I'm buying all these new models. I want more than 2 years play before you change the rules. An edition should be 5 or 6 years minimum. Then you've got the focus on tournament play. All right, I don't feel that quite so strongly under 10th. It's certainly there, but I think 8th and 9th focused more heavily on the tournament scene. But the MetaWatch stuff is not geared towards you and I playing at home. MetaWatch is geared towards tournaments. Every time they look at their points and their percentages, they're looking at tournament results and only at the big tournaments. They're not using something like the Tabletop Battles app to compare everybody's games to balance stuff out. They're only looking at a very specific set of players, which are the competitive tournament players who are willing to spend an absolute fortune on their models. Then you've got things like what happened recently, where they updated the website. Now, I'll be honest, even my finger on the pulse of things, I was not aware they were doing this. They've now released a new Warhammer community. Community? They've now released a new Warhammer store website that incorporates Games Workshop and Forge World under one thing. They've done it and it didn't work. I mean, come on. That's bad business. That's, did nobody bother to test this stuff on another server before they made it live? Seriously, what are you playing at? We all have these issues with Games Workshop. And I think they're right. I don't think there are many complaints I've ever seen where I felt that somebody was, they could just, wind your neck in and just get on with it. For me, the problem has been a long time coming. I think in the early 90s, when just before second edition was released, I think that's where you saw the change. Before that, during the 80s, Games Workshop was a great company, phenomenal company. They dealt with other people's products. I mean, this is all before the internet and so on. White Dwarf wasn't just their own products. It wasn't just a catalogue. And let's be honest, all White Dwarf is a catalogue for Games Workshop products. And they're conning you out of money for a catalogue. I remember in the latter days of Rogue Trader, being in my local Games Workshop store at the time, and being told by the area manager at the time that the reason things were changing and a new edition was coming and all this was basically because Games Workshop felt that everybody who had an army, and they're not likely to buy anything else. So they were going to basically sweep them to one side and just focus on the new blood. And unfortunately, I think that mentality has sustained through the last 30 years. This is why they got rid of Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Everybody that played that game had their army or armies, and they weren't going to buy new stuff. or if they did release a new army book for it and new models, they're only going to buy the new units that they might use. That's why they killed it off and redid it as Age of Sigmar, let's be honest. Where I genuinely think Games Workshop went wrong, though, was when they went and got themselves investors and basically traded out their stocks and everything else. Because the moment you do that, you are no longer in control of your business. I think it was a huge mistake. Yes, they've had a huge influx of cash, and that's meant that we've had awesome new models. The detail on models now is amazing. All right, it's too busy. But compared to what we were having 20 years ago, models are awesome sauce now. But these investors, when they make money, they expect that same level of money every year. You release a new edition because everyone's got to buy it. They should never have done that. I think the company and the game would have been perfectly fine carrying on as they were. They didn't need to do that. It's greed, pure and simple. Now, saying all this, I love Warhammer. I always have done, ever since Rogue Trader. I've tried other I've played other war games, and nothing holds a candle to 40k. I put up with it, and I think most people do. There are people who will walk away and go, no more. I don't like what you've done with the system. I'm not paying these prices, sodger, and off they go. I'm not. I feel I can't do that. I love the game too much. Hate the company, love the product. Love the community that I have become a part of because of it. Meeting new friends. Playing games against people I've never met before. Having a laugh. This is the true sort of positivity of Warhammer. Whether you're a 40k player, an Age of Sigmar player, whatever bad stuff that that Games Workshop have done, people like you and I can enjoy that product. We can enjoy the community it's created, and we can enjoy the lore with the books and everything else. And yes, I think that means we do have to put up with the negative side of it, which is not a good thing. But, Games Workshop as a company need to change their ways. They need to turn themselves around. I don't see it ever happening. They're too greedy. Like nearly every big business these days, they don't care about the consumer unless we're buying. And that's the problem. Anyway, I just wanted to do this quick video in response to that. It's an interesting video. I knew a lot of it before already. But basically saying, hey, this is really good. Ignore the negatives, I think was the wrong way of putting it. Anyway, thank you for watching. I'd like to know your thoughts. Pop them down below and pop over to Tabletop Tactics and look for their Games Workshop, The History and the Hate, and see whether you agree or disagree with what Beard says. And Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Until next time, good gaming.